Florence, a city of rebirth, beauty, and dazzling innovation. But beneath the glittering surface of Medici power, beneath the brushstrokes of masterful artists and the grand architecture of domes and palaces, lay a deeper current. And Florence held secrets whispered in dark alleys and hidden chambers. Powerful individuals, driven by ambition, ancient knowledge, or a burning desire to shape their world, moved in shadows. They formed societies, bound by oaths and symbols, operating outside the notice of the Duke, the Council, or even the formidable eye of Lorenzo the Magnificent. These groups weren't just clubs, they were hidden engines of influence, whispers of rebellion, guardians of forgotten truths. Their actions, often unseen, might have steered the course of history in ways we are only now beginning to grasp. Number 1. The Order of the Hidden Lily. Hidden deep within the winding, shadowed streets near the Oltrarno, where the scent of leather workshops and the faint murmur of the Arno River filled the air, lay a discreet, unassuming courtyard. It was bordered by tall, silent houses, their windows mostly shuttered. One of these houses, ancient and weathered, possessed a door of particularly dark, unadorned wood. No heraldry marked it, no grand knocker announced its presence. This was the entrance to one of the most enigmatic groups to ever operate in Medici, Florence, a society known only as the Order of the Hidden Lily. Their name itself was a paradox, for the lily, a symbol of purity, and of Florence itself, was here associated with that which was intensely private, deeply veiled from public sight. The Order of the Hidden Lily was not about political power in the overt sense, nor was it concerned with the accumulation of vast wealth. Their ambition was far grander, far more ancient than mastery of hidden knowledge, the pursuit of alchemical transformation and the unlocking of cosmic secrets that they believed governed both the natural world and the human spirit. Their origins were shrouded in legend, whispered to have roots stretching back to ancient Egyptian wisdom, carried through Arab scholars, and finally, in the early 1400s, finding fertile ground within Florence's intellectual ferment. Some accounts, found in fragmented Latin manuscripts with strange astrological diagrams, suggest the order was formally established by a reclusive scholar named Alvise da Vinci, not directly related to the famous artist, but sharing a similar thirst for discovery, who claimed to have translated previously unknown Hermetic texts brought from the East. Membership in the order was exceptionally exclusive, limited to perhaps a dozen individuals at any given time, never more than 20. These were not common citizens. They were often scholars, philosophers, artists, or even members of the wealthiest Florentine families who possessed a deep intellectual curiosity and an ample purse to fund esoteric research. Cosimo de' Medici, the elder, himself a patron of Neoplatonic philosophy and deeply interested in the esoteric, was rumored to have been a silent benefactor, if not an actual member. His fascination with works like the Corpus Hermeticum, which he had Marsilio Ficino translate, certainly aligned with the order's pursuits. A small, coded note found in a private Medici archive, dated to around 1460, refers to the garden where the white flower blooms, which some historians now interpret as a reference to the order's meeting place and symbol. The order's primary meeting place was a subterranean chamber beneath that unassuming house in the Oltrarno. Entry was granted only through a series of interlocking heavy stone doors, each requiring a specific sequence of knocks and a spoken passphrase that changed with the phases of the moon. The chamber itself was unlike any other space in Florence. It was circular, its walls adorned not with frescoes of saints or battle scenes, but with intricate alchemical symbols, astrological charts, and geometric patterns that seemed to pulse with a silent energy. In the center stood a large stone table, often laden with strange glassware, bubbling retorts, and dusty, leather-bound tomes. The air within was always thick with the scent of herbs, metals, and something else, something metallic and faintly sweet, the residue of countless experiments. Their rituals were not public ceremonies, but intensely private, often nocturnal sessions of study, experimentation, and meditation. These members would gather under the light of carefully placed oil lamps, discussing ancient texts on the transmutation of metals, the search for the philosopher's stone, and the secrets of longevity. They believed that physical transformation through alchemy was merely a path to spiritual enlightenment, a way to purify the soul and ascend to a higher state of consciousness. They conducted elaborate experiments involving the distillation of rare botanical essences and the careful heating of various minerals, all in pursuit of the perfect refined substance that would unlock greater understanding. A detailed, albeit highly cryptic, diary entry from a lesser-known Florentine scholar named Benedetto Velluti, dated to 1485, describes a night of fire and gold where shadows danced on the walls and the spirit soared beyond its earthly confines, hinting at some profound alchemical success witnessed within the order. The Order of the Hidden Lily was not directly involved in Florentine politics or trade, yet their influence was subtle, pervasive, and often profound. Through their members, who often held positions of power or influence in other capacities, they could subtly guide decisions, promote certain ideas, or even fund specific artistic projects that contained hidden allegories or alchemical symbols intended only for those who understood. For example, some art historians now debate whether certain details in Botticelli's Primavera, particularly the depiction of Mercury and the figures around him, contain coded alchemical references known only to initiates of the order. The painting itself was commissioned by Lorenzo di Pierfrancesco de' Medici, a cousin of Lorenzo the Magnificent, and himself a known enthusiast of esoteric knowledge. This connection suggests a possible channel of influence. One notable instance of their indirect influence might have been the sudden and unexpected discovery of new sources of quicksilver in the Florentine territories around 1470. While publicly attributed to diligent mining efforts, a cryptic message found among the private papers of one of the order's supposed members, a wealthy merchant named Piero da Empoli, reads simply, "The dragon's blood has been found where the 3 stars align." This phrase, taken in conjunction with the order's alchemical pursuits, suggests they might have used their esoteric knowledge to identify the precise geological locations, possibly through some form of dowsing or divination based on astrological calculations. The sudden influx of quicksilver, essential for various industries and for alchemical experiments, would have provided the order with a valuable resource and a quiet means to demonstrate their unique capabilities. Another fascinating theory suggests the order might have played a role in the recovery and translation of certain ancient Greek manuscripts. In the years following the fall of Constantinople in 1453, many precious texts made their way to Italy, and the order, with its deep reverence for ancient knowledge, might have actively sought out and funded expeditions to acquire these manuscripts, not just for their intellectual content, but for any hidden wisdom they might contain. A ledger entry from a monastic library in Bologna, dated to 1455, shows a large sum paid by an anonymous Florentine benefactor for a collection of obscure Greek treatises on natural philosophy, with a note appended for the purification of lead. This peculiar annotation points towards the order's alchemical interests. The Order of the Hidden Lily saw themselves as stewards of a deeper reality, attempting to unlock the secrets of creation itself. They believed that the universe was governed by a series of harmonic principles, and that by understanding these, humanity could ascend to a higher spiritual plane. Their experiments, often conducted in secret laboratories hidden within their members' private villas outside the city walls, were not merely about turning lead into gold, but about the grander work of transforming the human spirit from its base material state into a refined, enlightened one. A collection of detailed drawings, discovered in a hidden compartment of a desk once owned by a known alchemist active in Florence, show elaborate distillation apparatus and complex symbols alongside notes about the awakening of the inner fire and the marriage of sun and moon, which clearly point to a blend of practical alchemy and mystical philosophy. Their commitment to secrecy was absolute. Any breach of trust was met with immediate expulsion, and their oath of silence was enforced with a solemnity that bordered on the terrifying. Book accounts passed down through generations of families loosely connected to the order speak of members who simply disappeared or fell gravely ill after apparently revealing too much. While likely exaggerated, these stories underscore the order's fierce dedication to maintaining their hidden nature. They understood that their pursuits, blending science, mysticism, and what many would consider forbidden knowledge, would be met with suspicion by both the church and the common populace. Thus, their operations remained strictly out of sight. The order's influence continued into the late 15th century, possibly even influencing the young Leonardo da Vinci, who, despite his scientific rigor, also possessed a profound interest in alchemy, anatomy, and the mysteries of life. Though no direct link has ever been definitively proven, the conceptual overlaps between some of Leonardo's anatomical studies, his interest in the flow of water, and the order's pursuit of universal principles are striking. A cryptic passage in Leonardo's own notebooks mentions a secret garden of illumination where the seed of true wisdom is sown, a phrase eerily similar to the order's own veiled descriptions of their operations. The precise fate of the Order of the Hidden Lily remains as mysterious as its origins. As the political landscape of Florence shifted with the rise of Savonarola and the eventual expulsion of the Medici, the climate for esoteric societies became increasingly hostile. It is believed that the order either went even deeper underground, dispersing its members and its knowledge across Europe, or simply faded away as its remaining members succumbed to old age or a changing world that no longer had room for their quiet, profound quest. Their legacy, if it can be called that, exists not in grand monuments or public pronouncements, but in the subtle shifts of thought, the quiet spread of hermetic ideas, and the enduring fascination with the hidden layers of reality that continue to intrigue scholars and seekers to this day. The unassuming house in the Oltrarno still stands, silent and anonymous, its secrets perhaps forever buried beneath its ancient stones. Number 2, the Society of the Golden Compass. Florence, in the 15th century, was a city of merchants. Its wealth flowed from textiles, banking, and international trade, making it a powerful economic hub. But beneath the bustling markets and the opulent counting houses, there was another force at work, an organization so deeply embedded in the city's commercial arteries that its existence was known only to a select few. This was the Society of the Golden Compass, a clandestine group of Florence's most powerful bankers, guildmasters, and international traders. Their emblem, a simple golden compass, was rarely displayed openly. It was often etched subtly into the underside of a signet ring, woven into the lining of a cloak, or hidden within the intricate patterns of a family crest, visible only to those who knew what to look for. The society's origins were practical and deeply Florentine. It was formed in the early 1430s, during a period of intense rivalry between the city's leading families, particularly the Albizzi and the burgeoning Medici. A small group of influential merchants, weary of the constant political instability threatening their commercial interests, decided that direct political engagement was too risky and too public. They sought a more subtle, more effective way to ensure the economic prosperity of Florence, and by extension their own fortunes. They aimed to create a network that could quietly steer trade routes, influence loan agreements, and manipulate markets without drawing the attention of the Florentine signoria or the prying eyes of jealous rivals. The first known gathering, according to a heavily coded diary entry from a member of the Ricci family, occurred in a hidden back room of a wine merchant's shop on Via de' Cerchi, under the pretense of discussing new tariffs on imported goods. Membership in the Society of the Golden Compass was strictly by invitation only, extended to individuals who possessed not only immense wealth and influence, but also a sharp mind, an unwavering commitment to the group's shared financial interests, and an absolute discretion. Members were typically drawn from the ranks of the powerful Wool Guild, the Silk Guild, and most importantly the banking guilds. Giovanni de' Medici, Cosimo de' Medici's father, was rumored to have been one of its earliest informal architects, recognizing the need for such a covert financial network. Cosimo himself, a master banker, undoubtedly leveraged the society's reach and influence, though his official involvement was never recorded. A ledger from the Medici Bank, dated 1458, includes a series of unusually large, untraceable payments marked compassionate investment, which some scholars now believe were coded disbursements from the Society's communal funds. The Society's main meeting place was not a grand palazzo, but a series of interconnected private chambers located beneath the Mercato Nuovo, the New Market. Entry was through a seemingly innocent storage cellar, accessible only by a secret mechanism hidden behind a false wall. Once inside, the chambers were Spartan but functional, designed for discreet conversations and the exchange of sensitive documents. One room featured a large, intricately carved wooden table, often covered with maps of trade routes, shipping manifests, and ledgers detailing international currency exchange rates. The air here was always cool, smelling faintly of old paper and the metallic tang of coin. The rituals of the Society were less about spiritual enlightenment and more about the reinforcement of trust and shared purpose. New members underwent a solemn, quiet oath, pledging their fortunes and their silence to the group's collective aims. This oath was administered in a room lit only by a single candle, with a golden compass resting on a black velvet cloth. The symbolism was clear. They were to navigate the complex world of commerce together, guided by shared principles and mutual loyalty. Each member was given a small, unadorned golden compass meant to be kept hidden and used as a silent token of recognition when encountering another member in a foreign city or a public gathering. The goals of the Society were primarily economic dominance and the manipulation of trade. They sought to control key industries, influence commodity prices, and ensure that Florentine goods and capital maintained their supremacy across Europe. They achieved this through a coordinated network of agents, informants, and quiet leverage. For example, if a rival trading city like Genoa began to gain too much ground in a particular market, the Society might subtly flood that market with cheaper Florentine goods, temporarily driving down prices and forcing their rivals into unprofitable ventures, where they might discreetly buy up crucial raw materials, denying them to competitors. A series of letters from a Venetian merchant to his partner in 1475, now in the Venetian State Archives, complains bitterly about unseen hands that caused unnatural fluctuations in the spice market, hinting at the Society's manipulative tactics. One powerful example of their influence can be seen in the silk trade. Florence was renowned for its exquisite silks, but the supply of raw silk from the East was often volatile. The Society of the Golden Compass, through its extensive network of agents in Damascus, Alexandria, and even as far as China, established highly efficient and secret channels for raw silk procurement. They would often purchase entire harvests in advance, securing exclusive rights through agreements that bypassed traditional trade routes and official channels. This gave Florentine silk producers an undeniable advantage, allowing them to control quality and supply and command higher prices for their finished products. A customs record from Livorno, dated 1468, shows a massive shipment of raw silk arriving on a Florentine ship, registered under a shell company, with a significantly understated value. This kind of covert operation was a hallmark of the Society's methods. The Society also played a crucial, though unacknowledged, role in managing the Medici Bank's international operations. While Cosimo and later Lorenzo de' Medici were brilliant bankers, the Society provided them with an unparalleled intelligence network. Members across Europe would discreetly gather information on political stability, potential wars, and the financial health of various royal courts, all of which was invaluable for making informed lending decisions and protecting the bank's vast investments. When the Medici Bank faced a crisis in London in 1478, following a default by King Edward IV, it was widely believed that the bank's quick recovery was due to shrewd management. However, a recently discovered private communication between two Florentine agents in England, dated to that period, references the guidance of the compass, suggesting that the Society orchestrated a rapid and covert divestment of assets and the securing of new credit lines through its hidden channels, mitigating much of the potential loss. Beyond trade, the Society also had a subtle hand in civic finance. When the Florentine Republic needed to raise funds for public works or military campaigns, the society's members, acting individually but in coordination, could influence the terms of loans, subtly shifting interest rates or encouraging investments from particular sources. This gave them leverage over the city's governing bodies, ensuring that policies conducive to their economic interests were often adopted. While the Signoria believed they were making independent decisions, the invisible hand of the Golden Compass was often at work. A series of seemingly unconnected donations to specific public projects, such as the renovation of a bridge or the expansion of a granary, can be traced back to members of the society all around the same period, suggesting a coordinated effort to control infrastructure that benefited their trade networks. The Society of the Golden Compass was a testament to the power of discreet collaboration. They avoided public displays of wealth or power, preferring to operate from the shadows, influencing events rather than directly controlling them. They understood that true power lay in the flow of information and capital. Their meetings were sober, focused affairs, dominated by discussions of market trends, shipping logistics, and the reliability of foreign agents. There was little grand ceremony, only the quiet, methodical planning of economic strategy. The society's longevity is a testament to its effectiveness. It survived several changes in Florentine government, including the Pazzi conspiracy and the rise and fall of Savonarola. During turbulent times, its members would often adapt their strategies, pooling resources to protect their collective interests. For example, during Savonarola's puritanical reign, when trade was disrupted and public life became ascetic, the society quietly diverted investments into less visible, but equally profitable, ventures such as the discreet lending of money to wealthy individuals seeking to bypass public scrutiny. A coded message from a merchant in Lyon to his Florentine counterpart during this period, intercepted by Venetian spies but never fully deciphered, speaks of the gold flowing in hidden channels, even under the shadow of the sermon. The Society of the Golden Compass did not dissolve, it simply transformed. As the global economic landscape shifted and banking became more formalized, its original purpose as a covert network for direct market manipulation gradually faded. However, its methods of discreet intelligence gathering, coordinated financial action, and powerful networking continued, evolving into less formal, yet still highly influential syndicates of bankers and financiers that operated across Europe for centuries. The original Golden Compass symbols became family heirlooms, their true meaning known only to a few, a silent reminder of the vast unseen power that once governed the economic heart of Florence. The backrooms and hidden passages beneath the Mercato Nuovo were eventually swallowed by renovations, but the echoes of hushed conversations about vast fortunes and global trade can still be felt in the very foundations of the city's enduring commercial spirit. Number 3, the Confraternity of the Veiled Oracle. Florence, during the height of the Renaissance, was a crucible of new ideas, a place where ancient philosophy was rediscovered and debated with passionate intensity. The Platonic Academy, fostered by Cosimo de' Medici and led by the brilliant Marsilio Ficino, was at the heart of this intellectual revolution. But while the Academy championed the open study of Plato and the pursuit of humanistic ideals, a secret current flowed beneath its revered halls, a hidden layer of inquiry that delved into realms far more mysterious and potentially dangerous than public philosophy. This was the Confraternity of the Veiled Oracle, a society dedicated to the rediscovery and practice of ancient divination, prophecy, and the forgotten arts of invoking spiritual insight. The confraternity's origins are believed to have been rooted in a dissatisfaction with the purely intellectual approach of the Platonic Academy. While Ficino and his colleagues translated texts and engaged in lofty debates, a small group of their more adventurous students and associates felt that true wisdom lay not just in reading ancient words, but in experiencing ancient practices. They believed that the Neoplatonic concepts of a universal soul and divine inspiration could be tangibly accessed through specific rituals and mental disciplines. Their informal beginnings can be traced to hushed conversations in the gardens of the Medici Villa di Careggi, where Ficino's academy often met. These discussions moved from abstract philosophy to the practical application of Hermetic and Chaldean oracles, texts that hinted at methods for direct communication with celestial intelligences. A marginal note in a rare edition of Plotinus, now held in a private Vatican collection, bears a faint drawing of an eye, half covered by a veil, accompanied by the Greek word for unspoken, which some scholars interpret as an early symbol of the confraternity. Membership was by strict invitation, extended only to those within the Platonic Academy or its wider circle who showed not only intellectual prowess but also a deep receptiveness to esoteric concepts and a willingness to explore beyond the accepted boundaries of scholasticism. They were scholars, poets, a few curious members of the minor nobility, and even some artists who sought inspiration from unseen realms. Giovanni Pico della Mirandola, the brilliant prodigy who famously attempted to reconcile all philosophies, was certainly aware of the confraternity's existence, if not an active member himself. His own audacious claims about the unity of all knowledge and his interest in Kabbalah and magic made him a natural associate. A letter from Ficino to Pico, dated 1486, vaguely references a gathering of seekers who look beyond the stars for answers, suggesting a subtle acknowledgement of the confraternity's pursuits. The confraternity's main meeting place was a small, secluded chapel within the Palazzo Pitti, known only to a handful of trusted servants of the Medici family. This chapel, originally intended for private prayer, contained a hidden antechamber behind a false altar. This antechamber was dimly lit, often by a single, carefully placed oil lamp whose wick was soaked in unusual aromatic oils that created a hazy, almost hallucinatory atmosphere. The walls were unadorned, save for a few faint, almost invisible chalk drawings of astrological configurations and stylized human figures with eyes closed or veiled. The air within was always still and cool, permeated by the scent of frankincense and other rare resins used to induce states of heightened awareness. Their rituals were focused on divination and spiritual invocation. Unlike the public religious services of the church, these were deeply personal and intense experiences. Members would engage in prolonged meditation, often accompanied by specific chanting or the playing of strange, melancholic musical instruments designed to alter consciousness. They used various methods of divination, from interpreting the patterns of smoke from burning herbs to scrying with polished obsidian mirrors, and even experimenting with forms of lucid dreaming. Their goal was to receive visions, insights, or direct communications from what they believed were divine or angelic entities. They meticulously recorded these visions in coded journals, often in symbolic language, believing they held prophecies or guidance for the future. A detailed, small parchment scroll discovered among the papers of a Florentine scholar named Lorenzo della Volpaia, who was known for his interest in horology and astronomy, describes a vision of a winged lion rising from the sea and a crown falling from a tower, which some later speculated was a symbolic premonition of the fall of Venice's Doge and the coming political turmoil in Italy. One remarkable instance of their perceived influence involved the decision to purchase the ancient Hermetic texts that Marsilio Ficino translated at Cosimo de' Medici's insistence. While publicly lauded as a testament to Cosimo's intellectual foresight, some accounts within the confraternity's whispered histories suggest that the idea to acquire these specific texts, rather than others, came from a profound vision experienced by one of their members. This vision, according to a fragmented account in a later collection of esoteric Florentine anecdotes, apparently revealed the immense power and hidden truths contained within the Corpus Hermeticum, prompting the confraternity to discreetly urge Cosimo through their mutual connections to seek out and acquire these specific manuscripts. This would mean the entire trajectory of Florentine Neoplatonism, a cornerstone of the Renaissance, might have been subtly guided by a prophetic dream. Another example of their influence can be seen in certain artistic commissions. While artists like Botticelli or Michelangelo were inspired by classical mythology and Christian themes, some scholars now suggest that certain allegories or symbolic elements within their works might have been subtly influenced by the confraternity. For instance, the exact meaning of Botticelli's Mystic Nativity, with its complex symbolism and Greek inscriptions, has long been debated. Members of the Veiled Oracle, through their connections with patrons, might have quietly suggested particular iconographies or visual metaphors that encapsulated their esoteric beliefs, intending them to be understood only by those initiated into similar mystical interpretations. The choice of specific astrological conjunctions in certain religious scenes, or the inclusion of seemingly anachronistic elements, could be interpreted as subtle nods to the confraternity's hidden knowledge. The confraternity also played a role in the discreet dissemination of esoteric knowledge. While they kept their direct practices secret, they would often guide their members to publish works that, while seemingly academic, contained hidden layers of meaning or subtle references to ancient magical practices. This allowed them to spread their ideas without attracting the scrutiny of the church or the general public. Pico della Mirandola's oration on the dignity of man, while a celebration of human potential, also contained thinly veiled references to Kabbalistic magic and other esoteric traditions. Some now believe that the confraternity encouraged such intellectual boldness, knowing that the wider philosophical community would embrace the humanist message, while the hidden layers would resonate with those who sought deeper truths. The Veiled Oracle believed that true wisdom lay in a direct experience of the divine, that abstract intellectualism was merely a preparatory step. They sought to reawaken the ancient prophetic tradition that they believed had been lost. Their experiments with consciousness alteration using carefully prepared herbal infusions or controlled breathing exercises were designed to open the inner eye and allow access to higher planes of knowledge. A small ceramic pot found in an archaeological dig near the Palazzo Pitti contained residue of several potent herbs not typically used for culinary purposes, along with a tiny stylized carving of an eye, suggesting its use in ritualistic practices. The confraternity's secrecy was paramount because their pursuits, particularly the invocation of spirits and the practice of divination, bordered on what the church considered heresy. They operated with extreme caution, often communicating through riddles and allegories even among themselves. They understood the risks, and their initiation oaths emphasized absolute discretion with severe consequences for betrayal. The accounts of a Venetian ambassador to Florence, writing in 1490, mentioned a circle of mystics within the Florentine elite who dabble in the forbidden arts, but provided no specific names, only vague allusions to their influence. This shows how well the confraternity guarded its secrets. The fate of the confraternity of the Veiled Oracle became particularly precarious with the rise of Girolamo Savonarola. His fiery denunciations of paganism, humanism, and anything he considered to be against true Christian doctrine directly targeted the very philosophical and esoteric interests that the confraternity embodied. During the Bonfire of the Vanities, when books and artworks were publicly burned, many of the confraternity's members likely destroyed their own private collections of forbidden texts and artifacts to avoid persecution. The forced exile of the Medici also removed their primary protectors and patrons. It is believed that the confraternity did not disappear entirely, but fragmented, its members scattering across Europe, taking their knowledge and practices with them. Some sought refuge in Venice, others in Rome or even beyond the Alps. Their legacy, however, survived in the subtle shift towards a more experiential approach to spirituality, and in the enduring fascination with the hidden forces of the universe that continued to manifest in later Renaissance art and philosophy, often in forms so veiled they are only now being fully appreciated. The hidden antechamber in the Palazzo Pitti chapel remains silent and empty, a forgotten testament to a time when Florence sought to unlock the secrets of the divine. Number 4. The Guardians of the Arno. The Arno River, flowing through the heart of Florence, was more than just a waterway. It was the city's lifeblood, a source of commerce, defense, and even recreation. But for a select few, the river held a deeper significance. For centuries, whispered legends spoke of a covert group known as the Guardians of the Arno, a society operating entirely in the shadows, dedicated to protecting Florence not from external armies or political rivals, but from an insidious internal decay, corruption, injustice, and the exploitation of its common people. They were a silent force of vigilantes, a secret hand reaching out to correct wrongs that the official justice system often ignored or was powerless to address. The Guardians' origins are shrouded in practical necessity and a deep sense of civic duty. They are believed to have emerged in the late 1300s, perhaps from discontented members of Florence's lesser guilds or former soldiers who felt betrayed by the injustices of the powerful elite. They were not driven by wealth or intellectual pursuits, but by a raw, visceral commitment to the fairness and well-being of the Florentine Republic. Their first actions, according to fragmented notes found in a discarded account book from a tanner's guild, dated 1398, involved disrupting illicit grain hoarding operations during a period of famine, ensuring that food reached the poor. The account mentions the swift current of justice acting without signature or seal, suggesting the anonymous nature of their work. And membership in the Guardians of the Arno was not based on social standing or wealth, but on a demonstrated sense of honor, a strong moral compass, and a willingness to act decisively, even violently, when necessary. They were often drawn from the ranks of artisans, craftsmen, and even some ex-soldiers or former city guardsmen who had become disillusioned with the official channels of justice. There were never more than 50 members at any given time, ensuring tight coordination and absolute secrecy. Their initiation was a grim affair conducted on a moonless night by the banks of the Arno. New recruits swore an oath to Florence, to justice, and to silence, then plunged their hand into the cold river water, symbolically cleansing themselves of past allegiances and dedicating themselves to the city's silent defense. The Guardians had no grand central meeting place. Instead, they used a network of hidden tunnels, abandoned workshops, and forgotten cellars that laced the city's underbelly, particularly near the river. These were places only known to them, accessible through secret passages or disguised entrances. One common meeting point was a disused crypt beneath an old church in the Oltrarno, its entrance masked by a cleverly hinged stone slab. Inside, the air was damp and cold, carrying the earthy smell of ancient stone and the faint scent of the river above. Light came from a single hooded lantern, casting long, dancing shadows on the rough-hewn walls. The Guardians wore simple, dark cloaks with no distinguishing marks, their faces often obscured by deep hoods. Their operations were varied, ranging from subtle acts of sabotage against corrupt merchants to direct interventions against those who preyed on the vulnerable. They acted as enforcers of an unwritten code of justice. If a powerful family illegally seized land from a peasant, the Guardians might secretly destroy the false survey documents or subtly undermine the family's economic standing until they capitulated. If a merchant was cheating his workers, the Guardians might orchestrate a sudden, devastating accident at his workshop, causing financial loss and forcing him to change his ways. They rarely used lethal force, preferring to deliver a message through disruption and intimidation, but they were not above violence if the situation demanded it. A terse entry in a private diary of a Florentine lawyer in 1455, describing a client who mysteriously lost all his legal documents in a fire after attempting to foreclose on a poor family, ends with the phrase, "The river has its own justice," suggesting an understanding of the Guardians' methods. One specific instance of their intervention involved a corrupt grain merchant named Niccolo Baroni in the 1460s. Barone was notorious for buying up grain during times of plenty, hoarding it, and then selling it at exorbitant prices when supplies were low, causing immense suffering among the populace. The official authorities, often bribed or intimidated, did nothing. The Guardians of the Arno, however, decided to act. On a dark night, a small team of them, moving like ghosts through the city, infiltrated Baroni's hidden granary. They did not steal the grain, but subtly damaged the storage sacks and opened small cracks in the wooden walls, allowing rats and moisture to spoil a significant portion of his hoard. The next day, Baroni found his profits ruined, but with no clear evidence of foul play that could be traced to human action. The incident was dismissed as an unfortunate pest infestation, but among the common folk, whispers of the Arno's swift judgment spread quickly, reinforcing the legend of the Guardians. Another example involves their role in protecting vulnerable individuals. There are accounts of runaway apprentices or young women escaping forced marriages who, seemingly by chance, found anonymous aid and safe passage out of Florence. These chance encounters often involved a hooded figure appearing at a critical moment, offering directions to a hidden boat or a safe house outside the city walls. A collection of cryptic folk songs sung by the working class near the Arno sometimes include verses about the silent hand that guides the lost and the shadow that cleanses the city, echoing the Guardians' clandestine protective role. These weren't just individual acts of charity. They were coordinated efforts by the society to provide escape routes and safe havens for those wronged by the powerful. The Guardians of the Arno were fiercely independent, answering to no single patron or political faction. They saw themselves as loyal only to Florence itself, to the spirit of its people and the integrity of its laws. This made them both unpredictable and resilient. They were not easily bought or compromised, as their motivation stemmed from a deeply ingrained sense of justice rather than personal gain. They viewed the Medici, despite their patronage of arts and culture, with a wary eye, recognizing that even the most benevolent rulers could become targets if they allowed corruption to fester or if they overstepped the bounds of fairness. Their communication methods were complex and highly secure. They used dead drops, coded messages left in specific locations along the river, and pre-arranged signals visible only at night, such as the arrangement of lanterns on a specific bridge. They also employed a network of informants within the city, ordinary citizens who, without knowing the full extent of the Guardians' operations, would subtly pass on information about injustices or impending abuses of power. A series of small carved wooden fish found hidden in niches along the Ponte Vecchio have been identified as unique markers used by the Guardians to signify meeting points or to leave coded messages for each other. The Guardians of the Arno existed in a constant state of vigilance, a quiet counterbalance to the official power structures. They were the city's unseen immune system reacting to internal threats to its health. Their actions often led to rumors and superstitions among the populace, attributing sudden misfortunes to divine retribution or the wrath of vengeful spirits rather than the calculated actions of a secret society. The shadowy reputation, however, worked to their advantage, adding an aura of mystique and fear that sometimes deterred potential wrongdoers. As Florence moved through the turbulent late 15th and early 16th centuries, experiencing the Pazzi conspiracy, the rule of Savonarola, and the various expulsions and returns of the Medici, the Guardians adapted. They became even more elusive, sometimes aiding anti-Medici factions when they perceived them as fighting for justice, and at other times working against them if their actions threatened the stability or fairness of the city. Their survival through these turbulent times is a testament to their deep roots within the Florentine populace and their ability to remain hidden. The precise end of the Guardians of the Arno is not recorded. It is possible they simply faded as their original members aged, or perhaps they were slowly integrated into later, more formalized vigilante groups, or even early forms of organized crime, losing their original moral compass. Or perhaps they simply went so deep underground that their existence became an undetectable myth. Their legacy, however, remains in the enduring Florentine spirit of fierce independence and a deep-seated belief in justice, a belief that even in the most corrupt times there is always a way for the balance to be restored, sometimes by unseen hands moving silently along the banks of the Arno. the faint splash of a dropped stone, the silent slip of a shadow along a moonlit alley near the river, these are the only lingering echoes of the Guardians. Number 5. The Silent Brush Brotherhood. Florence, in the 15th century, was a city of unparalleled artistic genius. From the grandeur of Brunelleschi's dome to the vibrant frescoes of Masaccio and the ethereal beauty of Botticelli, art was everywhere, a testament to the city's wealth and creativity. But what if some of these masterpieces, admired for centuries, contained messages intended for only a select few? What if the very artists who created them were part of a secret society, manipulating public perception, subtly challenging authority, or preserving forgotten knowledge through their craft? This was the Silent Brush Brotherhood, a clandestine group of artists and artisans who used their skills to embed hidden meanings, coded critiques, and subversive symbols within the very fabric of Florence's artistic output. The Brotherhood's origins are not in ancient mysticism or mercantile ambition, but in the unique environment of the Florentine workshops. It is believed to have formed around the 1420s among a small circle of master artists and their most trusted apprentices who felt constrained by the demands of their patrons or the strictures of religious dogma. They yearned for a deeper form of expression, a way to communicate ideas that might be considered too radical, too heretical, or too politically sensitive for overt display. They saw art not just as decoration or devotion, but as a powerful medium for subtle communication and quiet subversion. The first known gathering, according to a fragmented sketch on the back of a tempera recipe, depicts 3 brushes crossed, with the inscription, "Speak not with tongue, but with light and shade." Membership was exclusive, limited to artists, sculptors, architects, and even master craftsmen from guilds like the stonemasons and jewelers. And they were chosen not just for their technical skill, but for their intellectual curiosity, their keen observational abilities, and their willingness to operate in the shadows. Filippo Brunelleschi, the architectural genius behind the Duomo, was whispered to have been an early, influential member, subtly incorporating certain geometric codes and optical illusions into his designs that went beyond mere aesthetics. His famously complex dome structure, with its interlocking bricks and hidden supports, some scholars now argue, contains layers of structural symbolism only perceivable by those who understood specific architectural ciphers of the Brotherhood. The Brotherhood had no single fixed meeting place. Instead, they utilized the very workshops where they labored, often meeting late at night after the apprentices had gone home. A specific corner of a studio, a secluded alcove behind a stack of canvases, or a private room above a sculptor's yard would serve as a temporary gathering point. These spaces were often dusty, permeated with the scent of turpentine, linseed oil, and freshly carved wood. That light was dim, usually from a few scattered candles, casting long, dancing shadows that suited their secretive discussions. They communicated through coded sketches, subtle hand gestures, and a lexicon of shared artistic terms that held double meanings. Their rituals were focused on the act of creation itself. Initiates would participate in a symbolic unveiling where they were taught to see beyond the surface of reality and art. They learned to embed symbols, use specific color palettes to convey hidden emotions, and employ subtle distortions of perspective or light that would only be apparent to those with a trained eye and knowledge of their codes. They also shared techniques for creating invisible inks, hidden compartments in furniture, and false backs on paintings that could conceal messages or documents. The oath of the Brotherhood, taken before a blank canvas, bound members to secrecy and to the principle of speaking without words, ensuring that their messages remained veiled from the uninitiated. The goals of the Silent Brush Brotherhood were complex. Sometimes they sought to subtly critique the powerful Medici family or the excesses of the church. Other times, they aimed to preserve ancient philosophical ideas or scientific discoveries that might be deemed dangerous or heretical. They often worked to champion humanist ideals, subtly emphasizing human dignity and potential even within religious themes. They believed that art could be a conduit for truth, a silent whisper that could endure for centuries, speaking to future generations who might be able to decipher their codes. One remarkable instance of their influence is often debated in relation to Leonardo da Vinci. While not directly a Florentine by birth, Leonardo spent significant time in the city, and his works are full of hidden complexities. Some art historians now speculate that Leonardo's Adoration of the Magi, commissioned by the Augustinian monks of San Donato a Scopeto, contains a series of deliberately unfinished elements and unusual background details that might be coded references. The swirling, chaotic background, the figures emerging from the shadows, and the unfinished nature itself could be interpreted as a silent commentary on the instability of the Medici rule, or a philosophical statement about the limitations of human perception. It is known that Leonardo worked on this painting during a period of political tension in Florence, suggesting an opportunity for subtle commentary. The Brotherhood might have encouraged such subversive artistic expression. Another striking example is seen in the works of Sandro Botticelli, particularly his allegorical paintings like Primavera or The Birth of Venus. While often interpreted through Neoplatonic lenses, some scholars now argue that certain details within these works, such as the specific species of flowers or the unusual gestures of the figures, are not merely aesthetic choices or classical references, but hold a deeper, coded meaning related to the Brotherhood's philosophy. The seemingly benign depiction of Venus, for example, might carry a hidden message about ideal beauty that subtly challenged conventional religious interpretations of female form. A detailed, almost microscopic examination of Primavera reveals minute, almost invisible brushstrokes that form geometric patterns, which some believe are not accidental but intentional markers placed by the Brotherhood. The Brotherhood also used their skills to influence public opinion during times of political unrest. During the Pazzi conspiracy in 1478, when a plot to overthrow the Medici erupted in violence, the Florentine authorities commissioned numerous works to demonize the Pazzi family. While many artists dutifully created propaganda, members of the Silent Brush Brotherhood might have embedded subtle counter-narratives or details that hinted at the complexities and injustices of the Medici regime, or perhaps even questioned the official narrative of the conspiracy itself. For instance, a now-lost fresco commissioned immediately after the conspiracy depicting the hanged conspirators might have contained subtle variations in facial expressions or body language that conveyed sympathy or protest rather than pure condemnation, readable only to those with the proper interpretive key. Their methods involved complex layering. They might use specific pigments, knowing how they would fade or change color over time to reveal a new image. They might employ pentimenti changes made during the painting process that are later painted over but can be seen through X-rays to leave a hidden initial image that hinted at a different meaning. Or they might use trompe-l'oeil techniques to create illusions of depth or hidden objects that would only be noticeable from a very specific vantage point known only to initiates. The very choice of subject matter could be a veiled statement. For instance, commissioning a painting of David and Goliath during a period of perceived tyranny could subtly hint at the desire for a smaller force to overcome a larger oppressive one. The Brotherhood's commitment to secrecy was essential for their survival. Their subtle subversions could be interpreted as heresy or political dissent, both of which carried severe penalties. They communicated through a sophisticated system of shared knowledge, where a new member was gradually introduced to deeper layers of meaning within works of art, learning to read the visual language of the Brotherhood. This ensured that only a select few truly understood their hidden messages. The passing of a specific type of paintbrush, unique in its construction, or a particular type of drawing charcoal from master to apprentice, was often a symbolic act of initiation into the Brotherhood's secrets. The Silent Brush Brotherhood, unlike other secret societies, did not seek direct political power or vast wealth. Their power lay in their ability to subtly shape the narrative, to plant seeds of thought, and to preserve truths through the enduring medium of art. They were the silent historians, the quiet philosophers, and the veiled critics of their age. As Florence entered the turbulent 16th century, with the rise of Michelangelo and Raphael, and the eventual decline of the Republic, the Brotherhood's influence likely evolved. The increasing scrutiny of the Counter-Reformation and the more rigid control over artistic expression made overt or even subtle subversion far riskier. It is believed that the Brotherhood either adapted its methods, making their codes even more obscure, or fragmented and dispersed its members, carrying their secret knowledge to other artistic centers in Europe. Some art historians believe that elements of their techniques can be traced in later works of the Baroque period, particularly in the use of symbolism and complex allegories. The enduring beauty of Florentine art, now seen through a new lens, might just reveal the silent whispers of a secret society embedded for centuries, waiting to be deciphered by those who truly know how to look.